Imagine sitting on a meditation cushion, right? You're breathing deeply, you're feeling perfectly at peace, and you are completely failing to realize that you are entirely missing the point of the practice.
Yeah, it's actually incredibly common.
Right, because you've achieved this, this coveted quiet mind. The stress is gone, your blood pressure is down. You basically feel like you've won the spiritual lottery.
Oh, absolutely. You feel fantastic.
But according to some of the oldest psychological frameworks in human history, you haven't actually solved anything. I mean, you've really just hit the pause button on your suffering.
It's the ultimate spiritual trap, honestly.
Ah.
Like, we live in a culture that treats peace of mind as the absolute finish line.
Right, like that's a whole goal.
Exactly. We are chronically overstimulated. We're constantly seeking the next life hack, right? Just to make the noise stop.
Oh, 100%.
So when we finally find a method that quiets that internal chatter, we just assume the work is done. We think we're cured. But an anesthetic isn't a cure.
And that tension, that exact misconception is exactly what we are diving into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
It's great to be here.
Today, we are exploring a really profound and remarkably precise analogy from Buddhist philosophy. And this framework basically maps out the mechanics of the human mind.
Yeah, it really does. It's fascinating.
It uses this image of a lake, right, to explain the deeply intertwined relationship between two foundational practices. So we have Samatha, which is tranquility, and Vipassanā, which is insight.
Two very different but very connected things.
Right, and more specifically, the mission for today's deep dive is looking at why our modern obsession with just, calming down is essentially a total misdiagnosis of the human condition.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is just how mechanically precise this specific analogy is.
How so?
Well, it doesn't treat the mind as some, mystical, ethereal cloud that we can't understand.
Right, no vague magic.
Exactly. It treats it like a fluid dynamic system, one that is strictly governed by cause and effect.
Oh, I like that, cause and effect.
Yeah, it just completely deconstructs the assumption that a peaceful mind is automatically a liberated mind. And it outlines exactly why these two famous wings of Eastern contemplative practice, they really have to operate together, or they just fail entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to start with the core image from the source text.
The lake.
The lake, right. The core premise begins by asking you, the listener, to visualize your mind as a lake. Now, ideally, this lake is clear and still.
Which is pretty rare for most of us.
It's seriously rare, because the reality is that the water is almost constantly churning. It's muddy. It's completely opaque.
It's just a mess.
Total mess. And the key here is why it's muddy. Because the philosophy argues that every time we engage in an act of, say, anger or greed, dishonesty or harm, we are effectively hurling a heavy stone into that water.
Right, a heavy, dense stone.
And we see the resulting waves, right? The stress, the anxiety, that horrible agitation. And what do? We immediately try to smooth out the surface of the water.
We just try to push the waves down.
Exactly. We are completely obsessed with the waves, but we entirely ignore the rocks.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly this mirrors our modern approach to, well, psychological distress in general.
Oh, totally.
Because we have this overwhelming, almost biological impulse to focus exclusively on symptom management.
Right. Just make the pain stop.
Yeah. When the anxiety hits, or the overwhelm sets, in which are the ways in this analogy, right, our immediate reaction is, I need to fix this feeling. I need to flatten these waves right now.
So we pour a huge glass of wine.
Exactly. Or we scroll on our phones for 3 hours. Or, we might even use a superficial breathing technique just to force the surface tension back to neutral.
But we are completely ignoring the kinetic energy that we are introducing into the system.
Yes. The metaphor of the stone is highly deliberate here. Because stones have density.
Right, they have weight to them.
They do. And when they break the surface, they create a cascade of kinetic energy that travels across the entire body of water. You can't just stop that energy by, patting the top of the water.
Yeah. And what's really striking about the source text is that this isn't an external bombardment.
No, I don't know.
Right, like, we aren't victims of a random rock slide here. The framework is very explicit about this. We are the ones standing on the shore, trucking these rocks into our own reservoir.
It's a hard truth to swallow.
It is. It's our own anger. It's our own greed, our own deceit that's causing all the turbulence. Yet, we look at the choppy water and we play the victim.
Oh, constantly.
We sit there wondering why our visibility is so poor and our environment is so hostile when we literally just threw a boulder in.
Exactly. it forces this radical shift in your locus of control.
Mm-hmm.
Because the disturbance isn't happening to you.
Right.
The disturbance is being generated by you.
Yeah.
And that is, it's an uncomfortable confrontation with our own agency, I think.
Uncomfortable is an understatement.
Right. We have to realize that we are the architects of our own psychological turbulence.
You know, it reminds me of someone complaining about a cracked, mud-splattered windshield, right? When they are the one actively choosing to do donuts in a gravel quarry.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yes. Like, you can't sit there frantically pulling the lever for the windshield wipers yelling, "Why is my visibility so terrible?"
Why is this happening to me?
Exactly. The wipers might clear the glass for, like, half a second, but they aren't going to stop the rocks from hitting the car.
No, of course not.
You have to stop driving in the quarry. Which I think brings us to the actual starting line of this entire process in the source material, a concept called Sīla.
Right, Sīla. And Sīla is a concept that has been largely amputated from the modern mindfulness movement, to be honest.
Oh, completely cut out. Why do you think that is?
Well, Sīla is typically translated as morality or virtue or ethical conduct.
Yeah.
And in a lot of contemporary wellness circles, bringing up morality makes people really squirm.
Yeah, it sounds a bit puritanical.
Exactly. It sounds like this cosmic scorecard where you're being judged for being bad.
Right. Right. Nobody wants to be told they're bad.
But within this framework, Sīla isn't a moral judgment at all. It is literally treated as a fundamental law of physics for the mind.
A law of physics. Okay. Break that down for me, because I think a lot of listeners might bristle at the idea that they can't achieve a calm mind just because they, told a white lie at work or snapped at their partner.
Sure. Let's look at the mechanics of deception or anger. If you are acting out of greed, or if you're speaking dishonestly, you are introducing massive cognitive load into your system.
Okay, cognitive load.
Right. Your mind has to work overtime to manage those lies. It has to maintain false narratives. It has to justify harmful actions to protect your ego or, scheme for things you desire.
It sounds exhausting, actually.
It is. It requires physiological arousal. Your nervous system reacts. Your cortisol spikes. And that mental taxation, that physiological arousal, that is the heavy stone hitting the water.
I see.
You simply cannot calm a body of water if you are actively throwing boulders into it. It defies the laws of nature.
So it's a purely pragmatic prerequisite. It's not about being a saint or some perfect religious figure.
Not at all.
It's just about basic systemic efficiency.
Precisely. If you want the water to settle, you have to mechanically stop the barrage of new kinetic energy.
Right.
Sīla, living ethically, not causing harm, is simply the physical act of putting the stones down. It gives the water the sheer opportunity to settle.
I want to push back on this slightly, though.
Okay, go for it.
Because you see high-functioning, highly successful people who are, frankly, quite ruthless.
Oh, sure. Very common in the corporate world.
Right. They operate with a lot of greed, maybe a lot of deception in business, yet they claim to use meditation to stay incredibly sharp and focused. They sit on the cushion, they breathe, they seem perfectly calm. Are you saying their meditation is entirely fake?
Not fake, no, but severely limited and incredibly fragile.
Fragile? What do you mean?
What they are achieving is compartmentalization, not liberation.
Okay, that's a big distinction.
It is. You can use sheer willpower to force the mind into a temporary state of concentration, sure. You can forcefully hold those waves down for 20 minutes a day.
Just suppressing it.
Exactly. But the underlying systemic agitation hasn't changed at all. The moment they get off the cushion, the mind just violently reverts to its default state of turbulence.
Because the rock-throwing resumes.
Because the rock-throwing resumes, the baseline of their nervous system remains highly activated all day long.
Wow.
The framework we are discussing argues that without Sīla, any peace you achieve is fundamentally unstable. It's a white-knuckled grip on calmness rather than a natural settling of the water.
Which perfectly sets up the transition to the next phase in this text. Let's assume we've actually done the groundwork, right?
We've put the rocks down.
We've dropped the rocks. We are practicing Sīla. We aren't creating new chaos. Now what? The framework explains that once this baseline of ethical non-harming is established, you train the mind to anchor onto a single object.
Like the breath, usually.
Right, like the breath. And naturally, without forcing it, the waves begin to settle, the water becomes still, and this is Samatha, the practice of tranquility.
And this is where the mind begins to truly mirror the physical properties of a deep, undisturbed lake.
It's a beautiful image.
It is. By focusing your attention on a single continuous anchor, the breath, You are intentionally depriving the mind of its usual chaotic, scattered inputs.
Right, you're not feeding it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You aren't forcing the water to be still. You are simply withdrawing the wind.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, especially for our listeners who might be deeply steeped in traditional yoga practices or Indian philosophy.
Oh, yes, this is a crucial connection.
Because we're talking about samatha, right? This intense, single-pointed concentration that leads to profound stillness. And if you are familiar with Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, you're probably drawing a massive parallel right now to the concept of samadhi.
It's a vital connection to make, and honestly, they are inextricably linked. For listeners operating within that yogic framework, samatha is the vehicle, and samadhi is the destination of that vehicle.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, samadhi is the eighth limb of yoga. It is that profound, unwavering state of absorption where the boundary between the meditator and the object of meditation just totally collapses.
Right, the subject-object divide disappears.
Exactly. The mind lake becomes as smooth as glass, the turbulence ceases entirely, there is no wind, there are no rocks, there are no ripples.
Just picture the physics of that for a second. When the agitation finally stops, gravity just takes over, right?
Yeah, it's natural gravity.
All that emotional silt, all the cognitive dirt that was suspended in the water and making it cloudy,
Yeah.
it naturally drifts down to the lake bed.
It sells out.
And the water above it becomes crystal clear. I mean, it must feel like absolute magic.
Oh, it does.
If you've lived your entire life in a storm of constant anxiety, constant planning, constant reactivity,
Yeah.
and you finally touch that state of samadhi, the relief must be intoxicating.
Intoxicating is exactly the right word. Because the phenomenology of a truly quiet mind is blissful. It is deeply, deeply restorative.
I can imagine.
And this is precisely why it becomes such a dangerous plateau for advanced practitioners.
Wait, dangerous?
Yes, dangerous. Because it feels so good, so liberated from the daily grind of that monkey mind
Yeah.
that the ego just latches onto it.
Ah, right. Look what I achieved.
Exactly. The practitioner basically sets up a lawn chair on the shore of their beautiful, perfectly still lake, cracks open a spiritual beverage, and declares themselves enlightened.
Wow. But the framework we are analyzing is pretty brutal about this point, isn't it?
It is uncompromising.
It explicitly states that a calm lake is peaceful, but peace alone is not liberation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is arguably the most radical and crucial pivot in the entire philosophical system.
Really? The most radical.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Because it diverges from so many other traditions that view tranquility as the ultimate zenith. The Buddha and the tradition of Vipassanā identified Samatha getting stuck in samadhi as a beautiful trap.
A beautiful trap.
Yes, it's a cosmic pause button. It's wonderful, but it is fundamentally incomplete.
So what does this all mean? I have to challenge this, honestly.
Please do.
Because why wouldn't peace be the goal? I mean, look at the state of the world right now. Look at the state of our nervous systems.
We're all exhausted.
We are so exhausted. If I can train my mind to be perfectly clear, perfectly calm, and rest in that state of samadhi, why mess with a good thing?
I hear that a lot.
Right. Like, who cares what's at the bottom of the lake if the surface is shining like a mirror?
Because conditional peace is fragile peace.
Conditional peace.
Yes. The tranquility achieved solely through samatha depends entirely on the environment. It requires the absolute absence of wind and the absolute absence of stones.
Right. You need perfect conditions.
You do. It requires you to maintain that intensely concentrated state. But what happens when you have to get up from the cushion?
Real life happens.
Exactly. What happens when a severe life crisis hits? A sudden bankruptcy, a
Yeah.
terrible medical diagnosis, a profound betrayal by someone you love.
The wind picks up.
Hurricane picks up. And because you haven't actually removed any of the dirt from the lake because it was all just sitting patiently on the bottom,
Right.
that hurricane churns the water.
Oh, wow.
All the unseen mud gets violently thrust back up into the water column. Your perfect peace shatters instantly.
So you're right back to square one.
You are right back where you started, completely consumed by a muddy, turbulent mind. The calmness didn't cure the underlying pathology. It merely suppressed the symptoms as long as the conditions were perfect.
You know, it's like living in a house with a massive mold problem in the basement.
Oh, I like that.
Right. But you just keep the basement door locked and you light some really expensive scented candles in the living room.
Perfect.
It smells great, it looks peaceful, but the rot is still there. And the second that basement door blows open in a storm, the whole house is toxic again.
Exactly. To guarantee that the water stays clear no matter how hard the wind blows, you have to dredge the lake.
You have to get the mud out.
You have to remove the mud entirely. But the mechanical problem is you can't dredge a lake if the water is so choppy and muddy that you can't even see the bottom.
Which is the true genius of Samatha. The stillness of Samadhi isn't the end product. It's the operational prerequisite.
It is a tool.
You calm the water, not to enjoy the calmness, but to create a lens clear enough to look down.
Precisely.
And that brings us to the second wing of this practice, Vipassanā, or insight meditation.
This is where the practice shifts from pure concentration to rigorous investigation. The source text often describes it as seeing reality exactly as it is.
Right, without the filters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Vipassana uses the pristine clarity of that samatha calmed mind to stare directly at the lake bed.
And what we find down there is rarely pretty, is it?
Usually it's pretty horrifying.
The analogy describes layers of sediment, rocks, and mud that have accumulated over many years. We're talking about greed, hatred, delusion, our deepest attachments, our most stubborn, conditioned mental habits.
The heavy stuff.
Right. These aren't just the fleeting frustrations of a bad Tuesday morning commute. These are structural.
They are the geological record of your psyche, essentially.
Geological record. Wow.
Think about it. Every time in your life you've reacted with intense aversion, every time you've clung desperately to a desire, every time you've operated under the delusion of a completely separate, rigid ego, a microscopic layer of silt has drifted to the bottom.
Just slowly building up over time.
Over a lifetime. And depending on the tradition, over multiple lifetimes, that sediment becomes incredibly dense. It forms the actual topography of your subconscious mind.
It literally shapes the landscape.
It does. It dictates how the currents of your thoughts naturally flow.
I think about it like draining a beautiful, serene reservoir.
Okay, paint that picture.
So we look at the surface, it reflects the mountains, it's totally pristine. But when they open the dams and actually drain the water out, you don't find a smooth, natural riverbed.
No, usually it's a mess.
Right. You discover the ruins of an old, flooded town. You see rusted-out cars, jagged concrete foundations, twisted metal, stuff that has been hidden under the beautiful surface for decades.
It's a very vivid image.
And when you achieve that deep calmness and you finally look into your own depths, it can be deeply shocking to see the rusted-out wreckage of your own old resentments or, the jagged concrete of your own deep-seated hatred and prejudice.
That is a phenomenal visual. And it highlights the immense, almost terrifying courage required to actually practice Vipassanā.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun at all.
It's not. When you use that concentrated mind to look inward, you aren't theorizing about abstract concepts of human nature. You are deliberately turning the spotlight on your own capacity for malice, your own bottomless greed, your own profound delusions.
You are staring at the ruined town.
You are staring right at it.
Yeah.
And there is no room for rationalization. The ego can't spin a comfortable narrative to protect itself because the concentrated mind is just observing the raw data of reality.
It sounds excruciating.
It can be very difficult, yes.
But obviously necessary, because if you don't map out that flooded town, your boat is constantly going to be snagging on the church steeple right beneath the surface every time the water level drops.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But here is the critical mechanical question, the real how of this whole system, because I'm trying to visualize this. Once you see this ugly sediment, what do you actually do with it?
Right, how do you get rid of it?
Yeah. If I see a massive boulder of jealousy at the bottom of my mental lake, I can't just reach into my brain with a shovel and dig it out.
No, you can't. And this is where the mechanics of Vipassana diverge completely from traditional Western problem solving.
Oh, so.
What we are so conditioned in the West to believe that to eliminate a psychological problem, we have to fight it, analyze its childhood origins, or forcibly replace it with a positive thought.
Right, the whole positive vibes only approach.
Exactly. But the insight framework provides a very different, highly specific mechanism for how the mere act of observation leads to the dissolution of the object.
So what is that mechanism? How does just looking at the mud make it go away?
This raises an important question, perhaps the most important question in the entire practice.
Alrighty.
It comes down to the fundamental nature of what you are actually observing. Through the intensely focused, hyperstable lens of Samatha, Vipassana allows you to see the microscopic quantum reality of that sediment.
Quantum reality.
Let's take a deep-seated hatred or a chronic anxiety. When you look closely at that dense emotion, you realize it isn't a solid monolithic block. It isn't a fixed object at all.
What is it then?
When observed with enough stability and resolution, you see that the boulder, is actually a rapidly vibrating mass of physical sensations and cognitive impulses.
Oh, wow.
It's rising, shifting, changing, and passing away, microsecond by microsecond. You see, it's absolute impermanent constantly.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you see that it is operating entirely on its own, based on past causes and conditions. It is not I, it is not me, and it is not mine.
Okay, wait. I am going to push back hard on that not me, not mine
I
concept.
figured you might.
Because if I look down into my subconscious, into my own mental lake, and I see a massive knot of jealousy or a deep well of anger, my immediate visceral reaction is, well, it's in my head, it's in my body, so it is my mud.
It feels very personal.
It feels intensely personal. I say, I am an angry person. I am a jealous person.
It feels personal, which is precisely why it holds absolute tyranny over you.
Really?
The ego's greatest trick is identification. But let's look at the mechanics of the lake again. We have to distinguish between the container and the contents.
Container and the contents, okay.
The lake contains the water, and currently the water contains the mud. But the water is not the mud.
Right.
The mud is conditioned debris. It was deposited there by past events, maybe childhood trauma, maybe societal conditioning, maybe a repeated pattern of reactivity.
Stuff that happened to the lake.
Exactly. It is a biological and psychological phenomenon occurring within your field of awareness, but it is not a permanent structural component of who you are.
Okay, let me make sure I'm grasping the actual mechanics of this. In the past, if I felt anger, I would identify with it entirely.
You'd merge with it.
Right. I would say, I am angry, which solidifies the emotion. I am essentially pouring concrete over it, claiming it as my identity.
That's a great way to phrase it, pouring concrete over it.
But if I use Vipassanā, I am stepping back. I am watching the anger not as a personal failing, but just as a sensation.
Sensations like heat or tension.
Yeah, heat in the chest, tightness in the jaw, a flurry of agitated thoughts. I'm realizing it's just a weather pattern passing over the lake.
Exactly. You are decoupling your identity from the phenomenon. And this is where the liberation actually occurs. Think of it less like fighting a monster and more like discovering a critical glitch in a piece of software.
A software glitch? How so?
When a software program is crashing, it's usually because a line of code is caught in an infinite loop, continuously feeding back on itself.
Right, you just get stuck.
When you identify with your anger, when you say, I am angry, you are providing the energy that keeps that loop running. Your attachment to the emotion, your belief that it is fundamentally you, is the electricity powering the glitch.
Oh, man. I am powering my own suffering.
We all are. But Vipassanā acts like a diagnostic tool. You open up the source code, you observe the loop running, and you realize, oh wait, this isn't the core operating system.
It's just a bad line of code.
This is just a rogue line of code executing based on a past input. The moment you truly see that, the moment you realize it is impersonal and impermanent, you stop feeding it electricity.
You pull the plug.
You pull the plug simply by not identifying with it. And without the energy of your attachment, the loop breaks. The defilement, the mud, naturally dissolves.
Just by observing it without attachment.
The causal chain of liberation is explicit here. As observation deepens into wisdom, meaning, seeing impermanence and non-self-attachment naturally weakens.
And when attachment weakens.
When attachment weakens, the psychological defilements lose their power to muddy the water. They literally starve to death in the light of awareness.
That is profound. You don't have to battle the deepest, darkest parts of your psyche.
You don't have to fight them at all.
You just have to generate enough stability to look at them without flinching and without claiming them as your own.
That is the essence of it, yes.
But it requires both tools. You need the intense stillness of Samatha to keep the camera steady, and you need the piercing investigation of Vipassanā to actually zoom in on the code.
They're completely interdependent.
Which leads us to the culmination of this entire framework in the source text, the inseparable synergistic nature of these two practices.
They're often described in the literature as the two wings of a bird.
Meaning you can't fly with just one.
A bird cannot fly with only one wing. It'll just fly in circles and crash. And the philosophy provides two very stark, very pragmatic warnings about trying to separate them or favoring one over the other.
Let's look at the first warning. It says that attempting to practice insight, Vipassanā, without sufficient calmness, Samatha, is like trying to peer into the depths of a lake during a raging storm.
Right. If you try to do the deep deconstructive work of Vipassanā without a stable foundation of concentration, it is not just ineffective, it can be psychologically destabilizing.
I can easily imagine that. If your nervous system is already completely frayed, if your mind is racing with anxiety, and you sit down and try to acutely analyze the root causes of your deepest insecurities,
It's a recipe for disaster
you aren't going to achieve insight, you're just going to trigger a massive panic attack.
because you lack the stability to hold the object.
Right. The waves of the storm distort the view completely. You might look down, see a tiny pebble of everyday insecurity, and because the water is so choppy and chaotic, it magnifies that pebble until it looks like a massive boulder of complete unworthiness.
It acts like a funhouse mirror for your anxieties.
You just end up thrashing around in your own psychological mud, exhausting yourself and creating more trauma.
Exactly. Without the anchor of Samādhi, introspection rapidly devolves into rumination, obsession, or even despair.
Wow, despair.
Yes, the mind simply lacks the structural stability to hold a difficult object in awareness without being swept away by the emotional undertow. You need the calmness to act as a shock absorber for the painful truths you are going to uncover.
That makes so much sense. But the inverse is equally dangerous, isn't it? And arguably more insidious because it feels so good.
Yes, the second warning.
Practicing only Samatha. We touched on the bliss junkie earlier, but the analogy frames it perfectly. It's like someone admiring the beautiful, mirror-like surface of the lake, but never discovering what lies underneath.
Is the trap of willful, blissful ignorance.
Willful ignorance.
Yes, because you have cultivated this extraordinary high-performance tool, a laser-focused, perfectly tranquil mind, but you're using it purely as a mechanism for escape rather than a mechanism for understanding.
You're just hiding in the peace.
You are using meditation as a highly sophisticated anesthetic rather than a scalpel. You feel fantastic while you are sitting on the cushion completely insulated from the world, but you are leaving the root causes of your suffering completely intact.
So if we pull all of this together, I marvel at the architectural elegance of this system.
It is incredibly cohesive.
It is incredibly practical. The way I'm visualizing the difference between the two practices now is like the difference between a mirror and a window.
Oh, I love that. Let's explore that.
Okay, so if you only practice Samatha, your mind becomes a perfect mirror. It is shiny, it is perfectly smooth, it reflects a beautiful, serene image of the sky.
Flawless surface.
But it is fundamentally opaque. You cannot see into it. You only see the surface reflection.
That is a perfect synthesis of the Samatha trap.
But when you introduce Vipassanā, that mirror turns into a crystal clear window.
You can see through.
You maintain all the smoothness and stability, but now you have depth. You can look right through the surface down into the absolute bedrock of who and what you are.
Yes.
You can map the flooded town, you can identify the software glitches, and you can watch them dissolve simply by shining the light of awareness on them.
The stillness allows you to see, and the seeing is what sets you free. True, unshakable liberation from suffering demands this dual, integrated approach.
It's non-negotiable.
It really is. You cannot bypass the unglamorous daily work of ethical living. You have to put down the stones.
Stop throwing the rocks.
You cannot skip the necessary, stabilizing tranquility of samatha. You have to let the water settle.
Let gravity do its job.
And you cannot hide from the rigorous, uncomfortable investigation of Vipassanā. You have to look directly at the mud until you realize it isn't you.
It is a remarkable journey, and it really brings us full circle to where we started with you, the listener.
It really does.
We've gone from mindlessly standing on the shore, chronically chucking the heavy stones of anger, greed, and deceit into our own mental lake, and wondering why we feel so stressed,
Playing the victim.
to finally taking responsibility and halting that barrage through Sīla. We've explored the incredible biological relief of letting the waves settle, achieving the glassy, perfect stillness of Samādhi.
The beautiful pause.
And finally, we unpacked the ultimate step. Having the profound courage to not just admire that calm surface, but to use that crystal clear water to gaze down into the darkest depths, facing our deepest conditioning and dissolving our suffering through the piercing insight of Vipassanā.
It is a complete roadmap from self-inflicted turbulence to absolute, unconditioned freedom. It serves as a powerful reminder that peace of mind is not the final destination. It is simply the vehicle we must build in order to arrive at truth.
So what does this all mean for tomorrow morning? Peace is the vehicle, truth is the destination. Which leaves me with a final thought I want to pass on to you, the listener, to mull over as you go about your week.
Some homework.
Exactly. The next time you feel overwhelmed, the next time you feel a massive wave of anxiety, anger, or frustration crashing over you, I want you to ask yourself a really hard question.
Are you going to just smooth the water?
Are you just going to frantically try to flatten the wave with another distraction, or are you finally brave enough to wait for the water to clear, look down, and see the stone that caused it?
A powerful question to sit with.
Truly. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an incredible exploration of a profound framework, and we deeply appreciate you taking the time to explore these waters with us. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of your lake.